What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ben Reeve. I am joined by Jake Botel, the newly minted married man. Jake Botel, how are you and how was the wedding?
I'm great. Wedding was fantastic. Could not have asked for better weather, which was the big concern. It's great. It started raining last night, so it stayed away for the weekend. But yeah, no, could not have asked for a more fairy tale setting, to be completely honest with you.
I'm glad to have you back, mate. It's been we did the show solo last week. It's not the same without you, though. It is better to have a two-person panel, but I was very happy that you tied the knot on the weekend, and we've got you back now. Guess who else we've got back, though? We've got Colin back on the buttons. He's in the van out the back, working the buttons. Welcome back, Colin. He is on a performance improvement plan, so we'll wait and see. Yes, one of his conditions of returning is it's all very public, how we're treating his return to work. None of it's private.
Absolutely.
It's all out there for the world to see. But good to have him back on the show. So thank you, Colin. Yeah, anything you want to say about Colin and his return? Are you confident in Colin being back, or have we got some doubts, Jake?
Look, we just had a bit of a dry run with him recording our Wednesday news wrap for the old Patreon subscribers. And look, he did fumble the ball straight out the chute, but I think he got things relatively back on track. And it's important to note the language around this. He's on a performance improvement plan, not a performance enhancement plan. We're sort of steering away from that direction and into this newer, healthier one for Colin.
And hopefully, health-wise, he gets back on track. But let's move on with the show. But before we move on, Jake, we do have to thank our sponsor, our channel or our network sponsor, Valhalla Brew Hall and Tap Room. Thank you, guys, big sponsors of the show. We appreciate all that you do for us. And if you're out the North Geelong way, or if you're in the CBD of Geelong, make sure you pop into either the Brew Hall in North Geelong or the Tap Room in the city. Maybe before a game in a few weeks' time against Port Adelaide, that'll be the way to go. Now, I'll bring up some match results, Jake, from the weekend. We'll have a quick look at who won, who lost. Let's start with the Cats. So right in the middle there, the Cats did the job up in Queensland, 63-37. We always start with the Cats. We have to start with the Cats. You've done it handily there, Jake. How'd you see that game?
Oh, it was a brilliant victory, a lovely way to wrap up my wedding Saturday. I didn't watch most of the first three quarters. By the time the last term finally rolled around, I was good to go and sit with Johnny Larkin of the Chaps on the front veranda where we had a TV set up, and we watched and basked in a wonderful, validating victory. Don't really care what the mainstream media have to say about soft schedules, blah, blah, blah. 6 wins from 6 games and winning in wet conditions. And as I've said on a couple of different spots on the network now, really took me back to some of those wet weather wins we used to have in those early flag years. The one I constantly quote, probably to the annoyance now of everybody, is a game over at Adelaide Oval against the Crows, where I believe we beat them 80-40 or something in that range. And Max Rook had a nice day. I think he kicked 3 goals. So, yeah, lovely stuff from my opinion, and a really great team performance that shows you can play the game as it should be played in any weather.
Are you saying, Jake, let me just get this right. Are you saying you didn't have the big projector screen behind you at the wedding, watching the game while exchanging rings and listen with the commentary in an earpiece? That you held off for a little bit? That for the VFL coverage as well, you on the phone.
It may shock people to know that I didn't petition to have our rings instead named as hoops. Our wedding hoops. It will shock people to know that I didn't have the VFL coverage on a second screen at the ceremony, or that Cat Attack didn't play after we'd signed our documents. I know this is all shocking news to people, but yeah, no, we were. I waited till the last quarter because that's just how classy I am as an individual.
I'm still waiting on my friendship ring. For all the Hoops crew team are. We all want these magical power rings that we share, that we bring them all. And one ring to rule them all is what we need to. All right, let's get through a few of the other games quickly, and then we'll dissect each team's form heading into round 7. So the Saints versus the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs got that job done pretty easily there in the end. Saints don't look too great there. Essendon just pipped Adelaide. Essendon, I can't read Essendon at the moment. I just don't know what to expect from them. I thought Adelaide was back, but clearly not. Collingwood look like a team on the rise at the moment. Poor Adelaide, maybe things are starting to fall apart a little bit there after a bright start. Carlton defeated number one team, well, it was in round 6, the GWS Giants by 3 goals there, 117-98. We talked about the Catters and the Lions. The Eagles are on a winning streak in the AFL, have defeated Fremantle 105-68. How is that happening? The Sydney Swans, they look scary good. 110 defeated the Gold Coast Suns 57. Don't know if the Suns are making the finals. Put Mr. Paul James, I know you tipped him to make the finals, but I don't think it's happening. And poor old North Melbourne, the loss to Hawthorn, the battle of the bottom, 68-113. Hawthorn, what are you? North Melbourne, you've got to beat Hawthorn. Come on. But, Jake, those were the results from round 6 of the AFL. Any surprises for you there? Clearly, we're happy the Cats won. Any team stands out for you that you're a little bit concerned about or you think's going to go okay this year?
Look, I still stand by. I think the Dogs are going to put it together. I think they're too talented to not do so. And my sort of stance on the Western Bulldogs has been either they do it this year, and doing it for me is making the top 4 and having a decent push at finals. If they don't do that, I think they'll move on from their coach. And I would say if that happens, then I think the Western Bulldogs are a team that could be Craig McRae come 2025. I think they're a list that if Bevo doesn't get the most out of them this year, then someone else can in a future season. And yeah, I think the right team won on the weekend in that game. I know the Dogs have fluctuated up and down a bit, but it's amazing to me how quickly people have formed a narrative about the Dogs. Like after 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it might be, I guess I understand it that's how these things work. But I still think the Dogs are going to make a push for finals. I still think they could be a really dangerous finals team. And the benefit, I guess, as for Bulldogs fans is, if they don't make a push for finals, then they've got the best of both worlds. Either they get it done and have a successful season, or they don't and they get rid of the coach and get someone else in who can maybe manage the talent better. Like it's sort of a win-win, I think, for Dogs fans out there. And yeah, I guess I didn't see the incident in the Crows Essendon game. I've got to admit, my mind was elsewhere late last week. But I was answer and say I didn't see the vision.
Right in front of me. Yeah, whatever. Move along, Crows fans. Now, Lockie Miller, you absolute hero. You're a star, Lockie. Look at that. A bit of a super sticker there from Lockie. Thank you very much, Lockie. We love you. We love you very much. You absolute superstar. All right, now, Jake, the way we're going to do the show, a slight tweak. Now, clearly, the first major difference is this show's not on a Sunday anymore. Yeah, we had a bit of a dry run on a Wednesday last week on my own, but we've moved it to Wednesday. We want it to be a live show. I've got Wednesday mornings off, and Jake has most of the time as well. But we are going to probably not so much focus on looking it'll be a little bit of a look back on the last week, but it's kind of in that sort of mid-range of the week. It's sort of a Wednesday. It's not quite we're still reviewing games. We're not looking ahead just yet. It's sort of that sort of weird sort of spot in the middle. So I really want to just kind of look at each teams and where they're at in isolation from each other rather than sort of who their opponents are. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm grading teams. It's a very scientific method, Jake. I'm grading them my way. It's my grading system. So I'm giving a team 2.5 points for an interstate win, 2 points for a win, and 1 point if they've got consecutive wins. And that's how I'm going to start. So we're going to start with the Cats, mate, because Cats have got a perfect 10 at the moment. No alcohol required supporting the Catters at the moment. We are absolutely flying. Yes, this is a Geelong show. Yes, this is a very biased Geelong show. And maybe my grading system is heavily weighted towards the Cats, but that's how it is. So this is how we're going to do it. We'll start with the Catters, 10 out of 10, in terms of my scoring system anyway. We have come off a 26-point interstate win against Brisbane. We are 4 from 4, 6 in a row. We'll just say 4. We're looking at the last 4 games. So we're 4 from 4. We've got Carlton next week at the MCG. Carlton currently 4th. We go okay against Carlton though, Jake. We're not too bad. 2 out of 4. We're okay at the MCG. 2 out of 4 there as well in the last 4 games. But talk to me about Tom Stewart not being there. And I've got Cam Guthrie listed as an out, one of our keys. But he could be a key in. We don't know.
Yeah, it'd be brave health and fitness staff to put Cam Guthrie back in off the back of what he's done in terms of his injury history. Week 1 straight back in, big game against Carlton. But having said that, it all depends, I suppose, on where his fitness levels are at. If they're happy with how fit he is, then I guess you're just as likely to do another injury having a run around in the VFL as the AFL. So, look, I don't think we'll see him this week personally. I think he'll get a run in the 2s. But Tom Stewart, if you had have gauged my fear levels going in to play Carlton without Tom Stewart in, say, like 2021, I would have been a nervous wreck. 2024, I am pretty bullish about our backline's ability to compensate for the loss. I know he's massive, but we've got Zach Guthrie, who did his best Tom Stewart impression on the weekend. You've got Sam DeConey. You've got Jack Henry. There's a number of players down the back there that I think can cover. And I think that's the strength of Geelong's team, is that it is a team. There's a whole group of players that can get the job done within a very disciplined defensive structure. I think something that does help cover the loss this season is how much we're pressuring outside of defensive 50. We're applying a really strong team defense across the ground that really helps cover, the back line a bit. I thought we got a bit exposed at times last year where there wasn't perhaps enough pressure through the midfield and teams were able to stream forward and catch our structure out before it was set up. But I don't think that's the case this year. And look, obviously you'd like to have Tom Stewart, but I don't mind the fact that the rest of his body sort of gets a rest, because we had a theory on the chaps that a couple of weeks ago, he looked like he was carrying a little niggle. Now, I don't think they ever reported anything, but he looked like he was hobbling around a bit, I think, in the Dogs game. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And we did talk about Tom Stewart. It wouldn't be the worst thing to give Tom a break, six games in, and anyone else, even if they are flying. At some stage, I'm sure we'll give Jezza, and Hawkins has already had a rest, but Jezza's probably due a rest at some point as well. So it's not the worst thing in the world. Hopefully he comes back in a week ready to go, but you never really know. I'm not sure how players go the first game back after a concussion, but we do need him. We've got I think Melbourne the week after, haven't we? So we'll definitely need him back. Cam Guthrie, overs or unders, Jake? He plays more than 6 seconds in the VFL. I hope he does. I hope he does. We're going overs. You heard it here first, people. Now, a couple of milestone games, Jake. We've got Sam DeConning on 50 games, and Jezza could be kicking 600 goals. He's a couple away.
You love to see it. I think Jezza will get that by halftime. Averages 3 goals a game against Carlton, just a tick over in his 10 matches against the Blues. So bullish about that. Actually thought Sam DeConing did a pretty good job last year when called into action to cover the absence of Tom Stewart in this very same fixture against the Blues. So Sam DeConing, I think, shapes as a major part of our backline, not just now, but moving forward. And I have a feeling he's going to play a lot more games. He's going to get to raise the bat a lot more times than just for this game number 50.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? All right, we've talked about the Cats, and yes, it's a biased Geelong show, but I did have the Cats' highest ranked team at the moment, and yes, the AFL world does not agree with me. They don't rate Geelong at the moment. A lot of power rankings still have Geelong around 6 or 7. But anyway, now the second team, Jake, who are currently 10th on the ladder, but in my rating system, I've got them being the second best team form-wise at the moment, and that's Collingwood. I've given them a grading of 8 out of 10 at the moment. They're coming off a 42-point home win against Port Adelaide, who we'd mark pretty highly coming into that game. They've won 3 out of their last 4. They're on a 3-game winning streak, and they've got Essendon, who are currently 7th. And Essendon, you don't know what to expect from them from week to week. That's at the MCG. this week. Now, the last 4 games against Essendon, they're 4 out of 4. They're absolutely flying. MCG, they've lost their way a little bit there, the MCG, but 2 out of 4 still, so they're not too bad. And really, no major outs for them at the moment. They're injury-wise, they're flying. They've got Dan McStay out, but, mate, they've got a healthy list.
Yeah, and like the injury to Dan McStay is one of those ones. It happened prior to the season starting, didn't it, or early on?
Yeah. I think it was
Um,
pre-season.
you know, you sort of get a chance to adapt a bit to that. So I actually quite like where you've got Collingwood in terms of, look, I don't know if I applied my own like sort of eye test and feelings, I don't know if I would have them second or not, but I'd certainly have them in the top 4. I know that's probably ridiculous to some people, but I think, they just had 38. Was it 38? 38 scoring shots against Port Adelaide. So that game, which could have been an evisceration or already was an evisceration, could have been an absolute nuclear shellacking. 38 scoring shots to 21 against Port and a 42-point win. I think Collingwood's going to be there or thereabouts again across the rest of the season. It's a long season, people. So, yeah, I've got a lot of faith that they still play a game style and still have a playing group that can rebound from a little bit of an early season hiccup. Cats fans should know better than anyone that an 0-3 start doesn't mean you can't then peel off a bunch of victories. We showed it last season. But for injuries, I think we would have gone a lot further too in 2023.
You said it exactly what was on my mind, Jake. We lost the first 3. We won the next 5. The difference with Collingwood, as I said, they don't really have many injuries. I mean, yeah, they got a couple of other injuries I wouldn't call them key players, but they're set up reasonably well, and hopefully for them and their supporters, it stays that way going into the year. Now, Jake, the third team in my grading system, the Ben method, is I've got Sydney at the moment with 7.5 out of 10. Now, they're coming off a massive 53-point home win against the Gold Coast Suns. They've won 3 out of their last 4. And they've got a big test this week against Hawthorn. 17th on the ladder, Hawthorn. Hawthorn is coming off a win though, so fair enough. And it is at the MCG, but mate, I don't see the Swans being troubled by this one. Do you?
No, not in the slightest. I really love where you've got the Swans in this. I think what you could pitch this as, you've applied the Benalytics. It's not analytics, it's Benalytics.
If we had Anna Tabu on the show, we could say the analytics, but it's the Benalytics on this one.
Yeah, no, the Benalytics I think have done a great job with Sydney. I reckon slotting them in around 3rd is just about right. I've watched limited amounts of them this season, but when I have watched them, they've looked really good. And there's a little bit of the sort of Spider-Man meme stuff about Geelong and the Sydney Swans in terms of the longevity of their success. The difference, I suppose, is that Geelong's Spider-Man in that equation has a bunch more premiership cups than Sydney's Spider-Man. But we're just discussing this actually at the wedding with a mate around the campfire that evening about how John Longmire's sort of his career sort of resume could look so different if a couple of grand final results go a different way. Like much like Chris Scott, he's been incredible. The consistency they've achieved, the longevity of success. But grand finals really do tend to define how you're remembered and thought of. But he'd have to be up there as one of the best coaches in the 21st century. He's just not got the silverware at the same level as a couple other guys. Yeah, no, I think the Swannies are good value for 3rd in the Benalytics.
The Benalytics, yes. I agree. I think Longmire and Chris Scott probably should be in the same conversation. I think a couple of games go a different way. All of a sudden, John Longmire is the master coach, and Chris Scott, why is he still coaching Geelong? Get rid of him kind of conversations. But look, some key outs for the Sydney Swans before we move on from them. Callum Mills, Luke Parker and Dane Rampy. They're scary good at the moment. If they can get some players back, I reckon I've got them as my new premiership favourites at the moment. I know, well, hang on, you're a Geelong supporter. Why aren't you got... No, I think I've still got Sydney as my premiership favourite. And they've got a big milestone game this week too for James Rowbottom. What big 100 games? He's a bloke that looks like he's been around forever as well. I can't believe he's only played 100 games. So good on him. Good on him.
Absolutely.
All right, now here's one. I reckon I'm going to get a few people up and about here. I've got Essendon fourth in my Benalytics in the rankings. I've got Essendon with a 7.5 out of 10. Now they're coming off a 3-point interstate win against Adelaide. They've won 3 out of their last 4 games. I didn't actually put how they're going. No, I do have that. Sorry, it's just written down a bit further on the next page. Next week they've got Collingwood, who I spoke about earlier, is probably the second best team. They've got them at the MCG. But here's the big but, Jake. Don't lie. Collingwood are smashing them 0-4 against Collingwood, and they're not crash hot at the MCG as well. They're travelling reasonably well injury wise, but I think for me, I think Essendon's going well at the moment, but I think it's going to be a typical Essendon type year. They look great, and then they're going to fall off. It's going to be a roller coaster ride for Bombers fans.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I was looking at Essendon going, 4 seems like pretty rich, but then again, you've got to take into account the context of the Benalytics, what it's evaluating, where the points are distributed. So, like, I get it. I would, again, if we added like a little bit of sort of, organic tampering, I guess, to the list based on what we've sort of seen and what we might feel about them outside of the numbers, I'd probably push them down, say, below Essendon, below Melbourne, but I'd have them in a similar group to Carlton, Brisbane, etc. The Port Adelaides, the Bulldogs, that kind of little group of teams. That's probably where I'd put the Bombers. But one thing, I guess, as Bombers fans, you'd have to be happy with the fact that they are winning some of these close games. I feel like it wasn't that long ago where, it was Essendon losing in heartbreak fashions, games that they shouldn't lose. I mean, they had one, was it just last year, to Port Adelaide, where that kick after the siren in wet weather conditions. I think it's nice to win close games, better than losing them. And, you'll take 4 points any way you can get them. I think the Bombers are building. As I said, though, I'd probably disagree with the Benalytics just a little bit, but that's my own personal sort of judgment added.
That's fine, Jake. That's why it's a 2-person show. We can disagree. But yeah, key outs for them. Jordan Ridley hasn't played. I think, what did he do? The quad? Quads were all the rage early in the year. And Peter Wright's not back yet. But no milestone games for them. And I think I didn't mention before, Collingwood's got Scott Pendlebury's about to rack up 10,000 possessions as well. So he's only a few away from that. All right, now we move on to the level 7s, or the couple of teams that I've graded as a 7. And the first one in this group is GWS. Now, they were previously undefeated until they had a 19-point loss to Carlton on the weekend. But their form's still pretty strong. They've won 3 out of 4. They've got Brisbane, who are still outside the 8 at the moment. They've got Brisbane, who are 12th at the moment. They're playing them at Manuka, or Manuka, however you say it. But not a good record against Brisbane, really. 0-4 against Brisbane in recent years, and only 2 out of 4 at Manuka in recent years. So I don't know, how are you finding their form? Have we got them about right, or did you say, Bombers are probably below them? Is that what you were sort of suggesting?
Yeah, I would have probably slotted the Bombers just below them a little, but look, I don't think it's wrong to have GWS ranked. And one of the things people always disagree with, when it comes to grading systems and stuff that don't just take into account wins, losses, and where you stack up, is that people will point to the fact GWS has a head-to-head win against Collingwood. And it's like, yeah, but would I take GWS over Collingwood again if you line them up tomorrow? No, I wouldn't, because I think there was so much that went into that Collingwood game. The fact that there was the heartbreak of last year, it was a feisty game. They almost got over the Pies a couple of times last season, I think. I think it was all that pressure, all that desire to beat Collingwood building into one match. They got the job done. I'm interested to see how the rest of the season pans out for GWS, because I almost feel like the first 6 weeks could be a little bit of an expansion of that concept of the win over Collingwood. The disappointment of last year, you bottle it all up over the off season, you attack the first, month and a half of the season, you tear through everybody, you beat the team that beat you last year, and then how long can that sustain you? What is there when that sort of, adrenaline fades and now we're just back to how good's your system, how good's your depth, can you continue to produce once that fire dies back a bit? Because I do think that the fire does die off a little, and then you're just left with the rest of the 20 weeks of the season sort of thing. So I'm interested to see how GWS roll on the rest of the year. I think they are very talented. But I think they're sort of like they're what St Kilda wishes they were.
Yeah.
If that makes any sort of sense. I think they're very similar teams. It's just that GWS is the AAA sort of version of what St Kilda would like to be. But yeah, that's just.
I think we'll learn a lot about GWS this week if they can beat Brisbane, and Brisbane's got a fair trip. Well, not really, a little bit downhill to Monica. But look, it's an interesting game. This one, Brisbane win it. Maybe Brisbane's back. I probably would like to have Brisbane a little bit higher on the Benalytics, but GWS, had they beaten Carlton on the weekend, would have been right at the top pretty much, and 6-0, but it wasn't to be. I'm concerned about GWS's injuries, though. Toby Green's going to miss this week, not through injury, but through suspension. Sam Taylor probably won't be back. It was a pretty nasty concussion. And Steve Coniglio, however you say it, away as well. So, there's some injury worries there for them, but they are so deep, absolutely deep. And they've got a 50-game milestone for Jack Buckley if he plays, if he's picked. So congrats to him. I think they'll be okay. They should get the job done against Brisbane. We'll come to our tips at the end, Jake. But they should be 6-1 at the end of this. Doing okay. I picked them at the start of the year to win the minor premiership. So whether they win the whole thing, I don't think they will this year. But I think they'll be there and abouts at the very pointy end. All right, now we're dropping. We only had one team graded a 7. We're into the 6.5s now. And we're talking about Carlton. So Carlton currently fourth on the. Sorry if that came through horribly on the microphone for anyone in the live chat, and for Jake at the other end. But Carlton fourth on the ladder. I've given them a 6.5. A big win against the top team in GWS, who we just spoke about. They are 3-4 at the moment. We are playing Carlton, as we know, at the MCG on Saturday night, or Saturday twilight, I should say. And it's a bit of a split with these two teams. The Cats and Carlton, we lost to them last time around by 8 points, but it's 2-4. The thing that stands out to me, though, is Carlton's won their, it's more than 4 in a row, but the last 4 at the at least the last 4 out of 4 at the MCG, and I think it goes even further, like 6 or 7, or with some finals last year and a few close games, though, so they could have gone either way. But they're reasonably handy at the MCG. How do you see Carlton at the moment, Jake?
An interesting one. It's funny to me how sort of similar you can build narratives around Carlton and Collingwood, in that, Carlton now almost taking up that, they're winning the close games kind of mantle.
Yeah, Collingwood
from the Pies. But to be honest, my perception of Carlton, and it could be an unfair one, and lots of people build unfair assessments of teams that they don't watch all the time. And I get angry when people do it about the Cats, but I'm about to do it about the Blues. I kind of think that Carlton are a top-heavy team. I think they're a top-heavy team that if you can shut down their best, say, 4 or 5 players, I don't think they've got the same depth as some other squads around the country. I think if they're half a dozen best don't fire, then the job probably doesn't get done. I think if you look at Geelong last week, Hawkins and Cameron going goalless, I don't think you can have a Carlton game where Curnow and Mackay say go goalless and they get the job done. I think someone in the comments is probably going to say, but that just happened 3 rounds ago. That's just my perception of them. I just think they need those 4 or 5 stars to fire in order to win games. And if you can get on top of them or match them there, I think you can sort of expose the depth of talent on
Mm.
their roster. Just my
Yeah,
thoughts.
interesting take on that one. I'm not completely sold on Carlton yet, but I know the media is, and that's fine. And I know Carlton supporters are getting very excited about their team's success, and it's been a long, long struggle for them over many, many years.
Mm.
But yeah, there's a lot of question marks for them on injuries at the moment as well. But some of these, I think Adam Sard's out for a little bit, but Adam Chera I don't know if he's out or he's you're not sure. There's I didn't have him on my list, but Wiedering he's done the corky. You know, there's a few banged up players in the squad. So I'm not, but they run pretty deep. I'm surprised how well they're going with all their injury worries at the moment. Sam Docherty, a big one, unfortunately for him, the knee. So they're very impressive, but the jury's still out for me yet. I think 5-1 for them is a great start. I think they're capable of being great this year, but I haven't been completely convinced yet. Look, if they beat us, they'll probably fall into the top 2 on the ladder at the end of the week. I'm guessing. If not, the cards go right, they might even finish top of the ladder. We'll see. I like what I'm seeing there, mate. No milestones for them, but Carlton is reasonably high on the ranking as it sits. Now, I reckon here's another one for you, Jake. This is probably where some people might have a little bit higher. Melbourne, I've graded a 6 out of 10 at the moment. Coming off a bye, it's not holding that against them, but the previous 4 games, they've won 3 out of 4. They've got Richmond this week. All those 3 wins are all been in Victoria. Nothing special for them there. They've got Richmond this week at the MCG. They should handle Richmond pretty easily. They do have a 4-4 record in the last 4 meetings against them. They're okay, 2-4 at the MCG. Some outs and some possible ins. I don't know. Christian Salem should be out. Charlie Spargo, Jake Bowie. I'm not sure how far away they are. They may come in at the last minute, but where do you see Melbourne? Do you think I've got them way too low here? They're actually still a premiership favourite, one of the premiership favourites. Again, this is the Benalytics form, but it's not, where teams are going to finish the end of the year.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I don't think you've got them way too low. As I said, I probably would have had them and GWS above Essendon. It's interesting how quickly perceptions can change. Melbourne from 5 and zip, they have a loss to Brisbane. And again, context, like Brisbane, absolute, backs against the wall, have to get a win to sort of ignite their season. It couldn't have gone worse for them the opening month. And then they rallied to get a win over the Ds. Now, the Ds have had some pretty impressive wins, I think. They went 5 and zip. They lost their first game to the Swans.
That's right.
Up at the SCG. There's a lot of teams going to win. A lot of teams going to lose to the Swans at the SCG this year. But, I think they comfortably handed the Dogs, a 45-point loss. Whipped the Hawks, which you'd expect them to. But then, going over to Adelaide Oval, beat 89, back that up, beating the Crows 78-63. I know we don't rate the Crows, but again, it's an interstate trip. If we as Cats fans are going to say, look at that, we've won at the Adelaide Oval against the Crows, we've won it, then you got to give them the credit. I think that Melbourne, I think they're strong defensively. I think they're strong in the midfield. I think their forward line is particularly limited. I think if they can play games that sort of, in some ways they remind me, and I know it's not completely accurate, those early 2000s Swans, where they wanted every game to be like 80-60. That's sort of Melbourne's mode to winning for mine, unless they just get on an absolute tear in a game against a bad team and, Bailey Fritsch kicks 6 when they put up 140 points. Like, I just think the forward line has its limitations, and so they need the game to stay lower scoring. But having said that sort of footy can translate really well in finals, as it did for those Sydney Swans teams in the early 2000s.
That's
so
true.
I think they're around the right mark, maybe a couple of spots higher if I was adjusting it.
And look, they probably will be at the end of this round. There's a chance that they'll climb back into the top four. Bit of a percentage boost, you'd imagine, against Richmond, who are absolutely falling away at a rapid rate right now. All right, now we get into the teams now, Jake, that are just going. They're just there and abouts. They're not flying at all. We start with Brisbane. I've given them a grading of 5. I've got 2 teams I've graded 5. Brisbane, as we know, 26-point loss to the Cats. They're 2-4. They've got another tough one this week at Manuka against the Giants, who are 3rd on the ladder. But in saying that, they've got a great record against the Giants in the last 4 meetings. They've won 4 out of 4, and they've won their last 2 at Manuka. So I don't know how to tip this one. I'll save my tips to the end, but this is going to be a tough one. I should say they're out with it. They don't have Oscar McInerney. He'll be out with concussion. We know they lost Kitty Coleman a while back, and Zach Bailey could. I think he's going to be. I think he's out. He might be back. I'm not sure. And Will Ashcroft is out still a little bit later on. But it's a big milestone game for Link McCarthy, former Cat. Where do you see Brisbane right now, Jake? Are we seeing? For me, the grading aside, they're just about to pop Brisbane, I reckon. They wouldn't be proud of their efforts on the weekend. I don't reckon they're far off it though. I reckon they're just about back.
I used to say about sort of the West Coast Eagles teams of, I can't remember, it was sort of mid-2000s. They're prior to them winning that 2018 flag, but there were some seasons there where they would beat up on everybody at home, and then once the fire was really hot in finals, they'd get found wanting. I feel exactly the same about this Brisbane team. I was surprised they made it as close as they did in the grand final last year. I just do not rate the way they go about it. I think it's a lot of fake tough guys, and I think they get found out by tough teams. Look, I think you're right in terms of part of what you've said just then, they're about to pop, is correct. I think even if they lose against GWS, that's fine. You're about to go and play the Suns at home, the Suns who seem to be setting at this point in the season. Then you've got the Crows, then you've got the Tigers, then you've got the Hawks.
Ooh.
So, there's a month of wins ahead, regardless of what happens here against GWS for the Brisbane Lions. So I think form-wise, we've got to be really careful in 5 weeks' time how we're talking about this Brisbane Lions team, because it could be they beat GWS and then they went on a run, or they lost to GWS, but now they're on a run. Let's remember the context of who they're about to play. These are teams that are all mired in the bottom half of the table.
I think part of me feels like the damage is already done to Brisbane, and I do agree that they're about to go on a run and they're about to climb up into the top 8. I don't see them. Maybe they squeeze into the top 4 if everything goes right from here on in, but I just don't see them being premiers now. I think the start has just killed them. Hopefully they can get back on track and be a contender, or at least be in the discussion in September, but I just don't see it anymore. I think too many things have gone wrong. We're nearly a third of the way through the season. It's not gone the way they wanted it to after a really heartbreaking grand final loss. But hopefully for the sake of the competition, hopefully this game's a cracker. I think it should be a lot better than third versus 12th on the ladder. I think this would normally be a top 4 game. The way these two teams, how I probably consider these two teams towards the end of the year. It's a serious blockbuster, this one. Yeah, it's at Manuka and it's two interstate teams, but it is a serious blockbuster, this one. All right, now, here's one, Jake. Here's one. I did not think I'd be grading this team as highly as what I have, but the West Coast Eagles. How can you believe it? I've given them a grading of 5, a 37-point win against the enemy in the derby or the derby. They've won 2 in a row, 2 out of the last 4. And they've got the Gold Coast this way, who, a bit like Essendon, you don't know what you're going to get week to week with the Gold Coast. That's at People First Stadium, or Carrara, I think is the traditional name there. Gold Coast they don't go too well against Gold Coast, though. 1 in 4 in the recent times, and they're not great at travelling to Carrara either. 1 in 4 there as well. Can West Coast minus, as we've just discovered, minus Harley Reid this week. He's having a rest. Can West Coast do it again, Jake? 3 in a row.
Well, first off, I just want to appreciate the list management of the feeder clubs, in AAA AFL baseball. West Coast acknowledging you want thread left on the tires for Harley when he gets to the big dance and starts playing footy down at the Cattery, like in a couple of seasons. So the rest
Stadium.
now, really appreciate it. Yeah, exactly. You want that arm to still be live when he's throwing pitches in the bigs. So look, West Coast, really interesting. This turnaround for them. What have they won? Is it back-to-back games that they've won? Is it 2 out of 3?
2 out of
You
2.
probably just said that. 2 out
Yeah,
of 2.
2 out of
I think that they are playing a lot better than they have been in the past. I think it's a really interesting decision to rest Harley Reid. That coaching group obviously feels pretty secure in their in their employment to say, look, you probably give us the best chance of winning more games, but we're going to give you a rest because we believe that's best for your future and our future. If you were really feeling your butt was getting hot on that coaching seat, you might just be like, Harley Reid plays every game. I think West Coast can actually become a real thorn in the side across the back half of this season. I think you saw examples of it last year when they got over the Dogs, and I know the Dogs did shoot themselves in the foot a few times, but I think West Coast are developing into a team this year that are going to be able to take advantage of you when you shoot yourself in the foot. Not everyone can do it. I don't think North Melbourne could take advantage of you when you shoot yourself in the foot. I think West Coast are becoming that team. And I think in the back half of this season, in the back third, I think this West Coast team are going to really play spoiler to a few teams' finals preparations by dishing them out a loss that just does not help in terms of where they stack up and where they end up traveling come finals time, which is good for West Coast fans.
Yeah. Good for West Coast fans. They're not going to like this, though. Sorry, West Coast fans. I don't have your team win another game all year. I think you've won 2 in a row. No, I think it's a false dawn. Bum, bum. No, you're going to sink hard in the next little bit. Unfortunately, yeah, they'll definitely lose this game against Gold Coast. Harley Reid's probably the only reason they're competitive at the moment. I think a bit like North Melbourne to start off last year, a couple of games early, didn't go too well after that. I see the same thing with West Coast. I just, unfortunately, prove me wrong. We might be back on this show in a few weeks, Jake, and they're 4-4. And I'll be eating my words a little bit there, but I am not picking West Coast to win another game in 2024. All right, now we're really getting to the bottom of the barrel, Jake. And could you believe I've got Port Adelaide here with a grading of 4 at the moment? After a 42-point, he's still giggling. After a 42-point interstate loss against Collingwood, they have won 2 out of their last 4, so they're thereabouts. But they've all been, home wins. They've had a fair bit of time down at South Australia lately. They do have St Kilda this week, back at home again. It seems like they haven't left South Australia. They got them at Adelaide Oval again. Got a pretty good history against the Saints, and clearly they've got a good history. 4 out of 4 against the Saints, I should say, and a good history at Adelaide Oval, 3 out of 4 in recent times as well. Am I being too harsh on Port Adelaide? They've lost at Collingwood. Have I been too harsh on them? Should they be a little bit higher up? They are currently 5th on the ladder. I just feel like form-wise, they're starting to lose their way a little bit.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Let's have a look at their form, how their wins have come. They're 4-2, 50-point win over West Coast. Should have been more. They had 40 scoring shots to 20, but couldn't kick straight. Then they beat Richmond by 30 points. Then they lose to Melbourne at home by 7. They wallop Essendon. You could argue that's their most impressive win, 111 to 42.
Okay.
They claim a close one, 66 to 63 over Fremantle, but then they get trounced.
They should have lost too, by the way.
So I think that they are a team that won't compete for top 4. I think they'll compete for a final spot. I just think they're going to fluctuate a little bit too much when they play better opponents. But I guess you've got to analyze their fixture moving forward. Like, what is their run home like? Maybe there's a 3-game patch here towards the end of the season. They play Carlton, which looks like it's going to be the MCG. They play Sydney and they play Melbourne in Melbourne. Depending on how those 3 games go, and obviously factoring into what happens over the next, 15 or whatever as well. But like, that could be a really crucial spot. How many, wins? Do they win 2 out of those 3? Do they win none out of those 3? And that could really dictate on whether this is a finals team or a top 4 team. I have my doubts about Port Adelaide as a top 4 team and as a true contender, despite how talented their midfield is on paper.
And they'll be Jason Horne-Francis won't be playing this week, as far as I can tell. I think it's a hammy for him. Could be wrong, but he doesn't look like he'll be there. Zach Butters brings up his 100th game. I think Port Adelaide, they're capable of going on a run. They did it last year. I think it was 10 or something games in a row they won. But it falls away quickly too. They're a team that probably should have been in a grand final in the last few years. I can't see it lasting much longer with this team. I think there's some other teams coming for them pretty hard at the moment. Well, not just for them, but climbing, young developing teams that are ready to sort of have their moment in the sun. And I think Port Adelaide want to make a move pretty soon, really. Otherwise, the time may have passed them by. But look, they're just going. They're just going okay. They've had some easy wins. So has Geelong, but haven't really had an impressive win yet. So as you said, the Essendon one maybe, but again, who depends on what Essendon team you get week to week as well. So who knows? They're 5th. They probably will beat the Saints. Probably will be pushing that top 4 this week. But we'll see, hey? We really need to incorporate some strength of schedule in some of these conversations, don't we? But all right, now, here's a team that had a fantastic win on the weekend. I've got a grade of 4, though. So the Port Adelaide Bulldogs, the Western Bulldogs have merged, have a 60-point win against the Saints. They've won 2 out of the last 4. Things were looking pretty scary there until they had that win against the Saints. Are they back? I don't think so. They've got a trip over to WA this week to play Freo at Optus Stadium, who they've got an okay record against, and they've got a reasonable record at Optus Stadium as well. Injury-wise, they're going pretty well. Coaching-wise, they're a rabble. No, I just don't like the coach. But I don't know. I think if you had played this game against Freo a few weeks ago, clearly everyone's tipping Freo, but maybe they're a bit of a sniff now. That's no Bailey Smith pun, but maybe they're a bit of a sniff with Freo sort of just losing their way. There's a chance. I'll give them a chance here in this game against Fremantle. Are the Bulldogs back? That one win against the Saints, is that enough to convince you they're back? Would you have them a little bit higher or lower on this list?
On this list, I might have. Oh wow, yeah. Look, I'd have them above West Coast. I'd have them above Brisbane personally.
Oh, okay, that's a good one.
But look, I think, are they about to take off? This is a little bit similar to another team we just talked about, in that they've got Freo this week, then they go home against Hawthorn, and then they've got the Tigers. So if they can find a way to win against Freo this week, they've got a very good chance of going 3-0 the next 3 weeks, which puts you at 6-2 after 2 months of footy. Then you've got a really interesting stretch. They travel to play the GWS Giants. They host the Sydney Swans. They play Collingwood. They play Brisbane. They play Freo again. So that will be a really interesting 5-game stretch for mine, and a bit of an interesting sort of look at where all those teams are at, particularly like GWS v the Dogs. Interesting game to sort of work out where that pecking order is. Bulldogs v Brisbane. Bulldogs v Freo twice. I think those teams are probably going to be competing for similar spots on the ladder, in my opinion.
Good call.
So, interesting little stretch.
We'll see. Hey, they're sitting 8th at the
Yep.
moment. That could go either way. Should beat the Saints. Sorry, they did beat the Saints. They should think they're a chance against Freo. They should. Freo 9th on the ladder. So yeah, one of those. It's an 8-point game, that one. All right, now we're scraping the bottom of the barrel now, Jake. Poor old St Kilda. I've given them a grading of 2.5. Terrible. The last game last week, 60-point home loss against the Bulldogs. They completely lost their way. 1 out of the last 4. They've got a tough match against Port Adelaide Bulldogs and Port Adelaide Power at Adelaide Oval this weekend. They've got a terrible record against Port Adelaide. Haven't beaten them in the last 4 games at least anyway. And a terrible record at Adelaide Oval. 1 win in the last 4. So I am not confident against the Saints, and poor old Saints fans. I was hoping this would be your year. It's not looking great, Jake. Where do you see it?
These are the numbers I would read to you. 68, 94, 67, 67, 79, 64. Those are the scores that St Kilda has kicked this season. They've cleared 80 once this year. They just can't score enough points to keep themselves in games with half decent opposition. I think it's the problem, they faced in the game against us. They were just shut out of it for way too long. And eventually Geelong's class showed out. They had the better players when it counted. Great win against, a hungover Collingwood. But then since then, there's been some brutal sort of results. They lost by 4 to Essendon. They scraped out a win over a pretty, listless Tigers side. They probably should have beaten GWS, in terms of getting within a point, but then GWS didn't take the most of their chances. They had 25 scoring shots to 19. So I just don't think Ross, the boss, brings enough firepower.
I was going to ask you, I think the chat about Ross will start heading up after this week, and I'm assuming they're going to lose this game. But I think, Ross is going to be having to answer some questions. There'll be some conversations happening about him, whether he's the right man, whether he's still got it as a coach. He's had a long career in the AFL as a coach without winning a premiership. He's an absolute. They love him for whatever reason, but we'll see. We'll see. Now, this is crazy. Fremantle are currently just outside the 8, but I've got them with a grading of 2 at the moment. Maybe the Benalytics have got this one a little bit wrong, but yes, graded them 2. A 37-point away loss to West Coast. It's essentially their home ground still. Whatever. They're on a 3-game losing streak though, Jake. 1 win in the last 4. A pretty bad losing streak after a great start. They've got the Bulldogs. It's at home. It's at Optus Stadium. The Port Adelaide Bulldogs. They've got them. If you're just tuning in, I've got that wrong a bit earlier. Clearly, it's the Western Bulldogs. A reasonable history, 2 out of 4 against the Dogs. You're not fantastic at Optus Stadium, though, in recent times. 2 out of the last 4. And a big out. Jai Amiss. He's going to miss this one, pun intended. He's out for this one. Can Freo get back into the 8, Jake, or are they going the wrong way? Which way are they heading?
Going the wrong way. This is St Kilda West. This is, Ross the boss, the touch lingers on teams seemingly. Like, again, here's some numbers for you. 93, 102, 69, 63, 63, 68. The 102 was kicked against North Melbourne. So again, this to me is a team that unless it's like a 76 to 65 kind of ball game, they just do not have the firepower to match it against teams like West Coast, who stuck 105 on them last week. I think the Dogs are going to be a big test for Freo. If the Dogs kick 85 points or something, what is it? 86 points, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's too much. They can't get it done. Now they might go and beat Richmond the next week, but then you've got Sydney, you got Collingwood and Melbourne a couple of weeks after that, and another game against the Dogs. It's tricky. Their run home. They've still got Sydney twice. They've got Melbourne twice. missing the 8 for mine.
Sadly for them, I have to agree. Yeah. And congrats if he does play this week. Sean Darcy brings up 100 games. Future cat Sean Darcy, next ruckman to support Toby Conway, you'd think. All right, moving on to Adelaide. We've got a couple of teams, or more than a couple, about 5 or 6 teams to go. Adelaide, I've got them 2.5. Should have had them actually. Should have been a little bit higher. I've done the ordering wrong. Adelaide 2.5, grade out of 10. A 3-point home loss against Essendon. Oh God. Well, I got this completely wrong. No, they're 1 out of their last 4. What have I done here? Oh God, it's not a show where I don't get something wrong. They've got North Melbourne next week. Surely they're getting this win. It's in Hobart, Blundstone Arena. They've got a great record against North Melbourne, though. Not so great at Blundstone Arena, but anyone would be happy to take North at the moment. They're about to fold and move up to Northern Territory or something pretty soon, or merge with another club. It just seems like it's imminent. And I don't know, Adelaide, is there much to say about Adelaide right now? Is it just, they were talked about as being a top 8 team, but they're just not showing enough, really. Losing at home against Essendon. Come on.
What happened? That's what I want to know. What happened? This has gone from a team that was one of the most exciting to watch to a team that, again, 54, 77, 34, 63. Now, they put up 100 against Carlton a couple of weeks ago, but then 75 against Essendon. This was meant to be one of the, an eye candy sort of team to watch this year. They were going to be fun to watch play. I don't get it. Yeah, I think they'll get the job done against North. They might get the job done over Port Adelaide in the derby. And their run's actually pretty favourable. I don't know if you've looked ahead to it, but North Melbourne this week, then Port, then a home game against Brisbane and Collingwood, but then you've got West Coast, Hawthorn, Richmond. So I don't know. I think they're going to be up and down.
I think it's
up and down, but misfires.
Too far gone for mine. I think they're going to have to start looking at next year. Maybe they need a mid-season break to regather and have a little camping trip somewhere. Sort of there. Or maybe we don't go down that path again.
Mention the war.
Don't go there again. Yeah, another team that was sparkling and everyone wants them to go well, Gold Coast Suns. What is happening to them? I've graded them a 2. An interstate loss against Sydney, that's fair enough. Sydney's a pretty good team, but you'd hope for a little bit more. You'd hope to see something from Gold Coast against a contender, but they just didn't show anything. They've won 1 game in 4. Thankfully, they've got a home game against West Coast, so they should start to correct things a little bit, but they're 11th on the ladder. Can they ever make the finals? It feels like another year where they start well and they just fall away again, and I don't know. It's going to be a tough one for them, a milestone game for them. Braden Fiorini's bringing up 100 games, but I don't know. I'm disappointed in Gold Coast. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that about their whole existence as a club, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not mad, just disappointed. You took the prime years of the greatest player of the 21st century and you couldn't conjure a finals appearance despite the fact that he played career best footy. Yeah, exactly. Campbell Brown was, outstanding for them. But look, I think they're going to miss the 8. That's what I'm going to say. They're going to miss the 8. I think that, don't you think that all this Dustin Martin chatter about an early retirement, et cetera, no, there's nothing to it. There's nothing to it. It's got all the hallmarks to me of like one of those NFL like star wide receiver moves where it's like rumblings in the media. It's nothing. As soon as the season ends. Yeah. 2-year mega deal signed for Dustin Martin to go to Gold Coast to try and help, his old buddy and the Suns get over the hump. I don't think they're getting it done this year. Maybe they'll get it done next year. I don't know. I'm
what it sounds like?
Not sure.
It sounds like our old mate Derek Hardwick, Damien's brother. I can't do it anymore. I'm burnt out. I just can't go anymore. A few weeks later, I'm back, baby. I'm back. That sounds what Dustin Martin's going to do, and he needs a bit of sunshine. And maybe the last year or 2 of his career up on the Gold Coast. All right, rounding things out, we've got Richmond, a couple of Richmond, Hawthorn, and North Melbourne to come. Sorry, so Richmond, rubbish, coming off a bye, 1 game in 4. They're going to lose again this week against Melbourne at the MCG. Previously, they'd never lost it. They couldn't lose at the MCG years back, but no good against Melbourne historically. 0-4 in the last 4 against them, and they've absolutely decimated with injuries. I don't know what you can really say about Richmond other than Q's in the rack already, mate. Surely they're just going through the motions now.
I think it was the lads at the Back Pocket podcast that said, surely it's time to just slowly start sneaking back premiership, memorabilia into the building after Adam Uze cleared it all out. Like, I can just imagine sort of just one at a time. They like sneak, one premiership cup back in. 2 weeks later, there's a banner hanging. Oh, didn't know that was there. I've never been happier to be more wrong about a football team. I had Richmond pegged as finals, competing for the top 4. I thought they'd done a really good job of recruiting some young talent to replace. I think Tim Taranto is an absolute gun. I don't know. I was absolutely wrong. I've never been more wrong about a team, to be honest, and none of it has made me happier than this has.
And Hawthorn is the next team as well, who I'm very happy that they're struggling and they'll be in another 15-year rebuild. That'll be great. AFL media still loves Hawthorn. I don't know why. Apparently, they've got the best young kids going around, but, show me something. I've graded them a 2 as well. A 40. They are coming off a win, to be fair, against North Melbourne, but their first win of the year. Not really much to speak of there. Are they going to beat Sydney next week? No, they are not, Jake. They are not beating Sydney next week, even if it's at the MCG. It's not going to happen. I will get a Hawthorn tattoo on my neck if that happens. I hope that doesn't happen. But no, they're no good against Sydney. They're no good at the MCG, 0-4. And yeah, they just go. The injuries are they're okay, but Will Day, the big one for them, it's not there, and I don't think Bruce is going to be there either. But can we just enjoy these moments, these days, these happy days, mate, where Hawthorn is bringing up the bottom of the ladder? It's just beautiful times to be alive.
I can just imagine it. You'd have to get a big like Stuart Dew on the side of the neck, or something like that. Launching bombs in 2008. Swans. I don't think they're going to beat the Dogs. I think they will be in a dog fight with St Kilda, and I think they'll get pumped by Port Adelaide the following week. So yeah, I don't know. If you'll allow me a 30-second indulgence, Hawthorn for me are, I've had a lot of this chat about North Melbourne, the 2016 North Melbourne, where they just punted Boomer Harvey out of the building. Yes. They jettisoned, Drew Petrie, and, Sean Higgins was soon to follow. I am convinced that in an era where structure and knowing how to play your role without stuffing it up for everyone else is as important as it's ever been, the idea that you just got to reinject youth into the side and we'll get good, fast, young footy players in, you are better to have your Mark O'Connors, your Zach Tui's, your Sean Higgins, your Sam Menegolas for a few years. They may not be the best players. They may not be as physically talented, but keeping a bit of experience around the bunch. Look, I think it's a brutal to the bone rebuild that Hawthorn are experiencing. And I don't really understand how you could have been convinced there was going to be any other outcome.
Because long may it continue. Long may
absolutely
continue. Sorry, any Hawks fans that have stumbled upon this show. All right, bringing up the rear. Poor old North Melbourne, 0 grading. Yes, we do zeros on this show. They are 0. A 45-point loss against the team we just spoke about, Hawthorn, on a 6-game losing streak. Haven't won this year. They do have a home game, I suppose, against Adelaide at Hobart, but they're no good against Adelaide. Can they somehow sneak a win? Is it ever going to happen, Jake? Are they ever going to turn this club around? What's going to have to change? Sack the coach. He's no good.
Gee, yeah. I mean, it's amazing. You think about all the stuff they waded through, like last year and early this year, in terms of, are they going to have to move on from him? It's all this off-field stuff. No, it will stand. It's going to get us there. Imagine if it just doesn't. If you've waded through all this as the ruse, you think you're getting your savior, and then it doesn't happen. Now, I would say, let's be patient and see. And I'm talking to the North Melbourne fans, because I've got to say, I've got a bit of a soft spot for North Melbourne fans. Watching some of their people come down and stick it out in absolutely disgusting conditions while we took their team to the woodshed on multiple occasions over the last, however long. I respect the commitment and the loyalty. So I would like them to have a team that they can be proud of. And I wouldn't say that about many other clubs in the AFL, really. They can all get stuffed most of the time, as far as I'm concerned. But I feel for North. I really do. And I don't think it's getting much easier. And I think, don't make me tap the sign again about how to rebuild and retool a team. But what are we doing? Getting rid of club legends. And so I do think you can trace all of this back to 2016. You punted Boomer Harvey out of the building. I've been on this week.
You have.
And I think we're going to just see they better turn it around really quick, or the young, exciting talent that's on this list at the moment is going to get jack of it, and they are going to end up playing in different Guernseys across the next half decade. And you're going to be back to square one, because it's easier than ever for players to move club. This needs to be turned around ASAP for the Kangaroos. And I don't think it's going to happen across the next month and a half.
No, dark times ahead for North, unfortunately. It's not looking great. So, all right, those are the Benalytics. Those are my rankings, power rankings. I don't want to go with that. Look, I like your one. Benalytics is probably the way to go there, Jake. Who knows what that'll look like next week? I still have the Cats being top there in a week's time from now, but we'll see. We'll see. Let's quickly round out the show, Jake. We'll go over our predictions for the week. It's not meant to be confused with Rachel's footy tipping show, which will drop tomorrow morning. But Richmond versus Melbourne, who have you got for this one and why?
The D's, deeper, stronger. Richmond are toothless.
I agree. Deeper and stronger is giving me thoughts of something else. But yes, I think Melbourne easily on this one. Now, Essendon, Collingwood. Oh, God, I'm going to just go out on a limb and say Essendon's going to win this one. I don't know. Collingwood should be back. They're our form team. But Essendon, it's their time, Jake. It's got to be their time. Come on. They have to be due to get a scalp. I'm picking Essendon on this one.
I apologise to Bombers fans. I think we are still living in a time where the Pies are going to be pretty good. I think Collingwood by 3 goals.
Still pretty close. Pretty close, though. All right, GWS versus Brisbane. It should be 2 top 4 teams, but Brisbane's start of the year pretty slow. I'm still going to say GWS for this one, but I wouldn't be surprised if Brisbane get a win at Manuka Oval here.
Yeah, I'm actually going to probably pick Brisbane based on the fact that Toby Green isn't playing for GWS. I think he's a massive difference maker. I think it'll be close, but flip a coin. But I'm going to say Brisbane.
You could say Oscar McInerney makes a difference and helps GWS too.
That's true too.
For Brisbane. So this will be a real interesting game, and will tell us a bit about both sides, I think, into next week. All right, Port Adelaide versus St Kilda. Mate, this is a game. Port Adelaide 100% should win this game. But what's the bet we come together at some point and go, how the hell did Port Adelaide lose to St Kilda? I guarantee everyone's getting this tip wrong, because we're all going to pick Port Adelaide. Well, I think I assume you are too. But St Kilda will win this one. So I am going to flip it. I'm going to say Saints win this one for no reason whatsoever other than my footy tipping sucks, and I feel like this is the type of game that you get wrong.
Yeah, I can't go against Port, to be honest. Port after the embarrassment of last week in the prison bar battle. I think they win, and I think they win the next week against the Crows, and then they cop a flogging down at Cardinia Park. But they'll win this week.
All right. You're playing it safe. Very good. North Melbourne versus Adelaide is I think we've just spoken about North and we're not feeling confident there, but then Adelaide's only had one win. Oh God, I've got to pick Adelaide on this one, but not with a whole lot of confidence, Jake.
Yeah, Crows for me. Think they'll do enough to sort of bully North. Yep. No, I can't go past Crows.
Pretty straightforward. Here we go. Cats versus Carlton. Yes, I will say Geelong just by maybe a couple of goals.
I'm going Geelong first quarter blitz, and then that creates enough of a gap that despite what Carlton try and do, the Cats are able to win out 3-4 goals in the end. But they really put the Blues to the sword early in the game. Cats.
I'm going to say Koladashny kicks a goal too, just to throw in a bit of extra spice there.
Like that.
Koladashny goal. Fremantle versus the Port Adelaide Bulldogs. I'm sticking with this one, Jake. I'm going to pick Fremantle because somehow, again, Bulldogs looking good at the moment, but they're all over the shop. Fremantle is as well. I just got to go the WA team on this one. If they're going to win games, it'll be at Perth.
I'm picking the Western Bulldogs by 5 goals. I think they win about 95 to 65. And I think that's Dogs fans are going to be feeling pretty bullish about themselves after they deal with Hawthorn and Richmond the next 2 weeks. And they are 3-0 from 3, 4-0 from their last 4.
Very good. Gold Coast versus West Coast. West Coast by 60 points. No, I think I'll probably just tip the Gold Coast to win this one by maybe 40 odd. No Harley Reid for West Coast. So, Gold Coast should account for the Eagles.
Yep, definitely Gold Coast to win this one for me.
And the grand final rematch a few years back now, Hawthorn versus Sydney. The Sydney, yes. But again, footy tipping gods hate me, Jake. They hate me. They want me to feel pain. They want me to be sad all the time. So don't be surprised if Hawthorn pull a win out of their ass on this one. But yeah, I'll go Sydney. I'll go Sydney. I have to.
Yeah, the Swans for me, I think they do, imperious things with the footy against the Hawks on the weekend, despite the fact that it's where is it down in Melbourne or is it? It's not a Hawthorn and Tassie game, is it?
MCG.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Nah. Swannies for me by 40.
Comfortable. Jake, we're well over an hour. I think that'll do. Thank you to you, Jake, and congrats again on getting married. If you didn't already know, we've said it about 4 or 5 shows we've done now, but congrats on the nuptials. Well done to you and your partner there. Now, thank you to everyone who's been watching in the chat online. For those catching up a little bit later, thank you as well. Now, we have just recorded our Wednesday news wrap. We do that every week. That is on our Patreon page. Now, if you want to, we are offering 7-day trial memberships at the moment. So get on over, check that one out. We absolutely love our Wednesday news wrap shows, don't we, Jake? We have a bit of fun there. It's all about the Catters, exclusively all Geelong stuff. And we have a nice little chat about Max Holmes today. So get across that one. Now, Rach, we've got Rach's tips dropping tomorrow morning as well, Thursday morning. And you'll be back with the chaps, Jake, on Thursday evening for the match preview against Carlton, which will probably drop later in the evening, probably drop a little bit quicker on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those audio sort of feeds that you've got out there. When are you doing your your VFL preview this week? Is that when does that normally drop, Jake?
It's generally like a early Friday afternoon. Just got to wait for the teams to drop. So yeah, generally early Fridays.
Beautiful. So check that one out. But as always, don't forget to like, don't forget to share the videos. And if you haven't, why haven't you? Subscribe to the show, please. We love it. Show us some love. Give us some love. Thank you to Lockie before for the nice little super chat message there of the 5 or 450 or whatever it was. Thank you very much, Lockie, for that. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram and Facebook. So give us a follow there as well. And Jake, as always, go Cats.
Go the Cats.
See you next time, everyone. See you next time.